Hi, wonderfully created. Welcome back to Creatediam. In time for the summer, we're going to be making a circle dress. It's going to be a basic one. The front piece is going to be the same as the back, and I'm going to try and cut it all together. You can do it separately and make it a bit more tailored. That is up to you. So you're going to need one measurement, which is the length of your dress. I decided to go from my shoulder to my knee, which was around 100 centimeters for me. You want to cut a rectangle that is 4 times the length of your dress and the width is the length of your dress. So I cut a rectangle that was 400 centimeters, 4 meters by 100 centimeters, 1 meter. I did this by measuring 200 centimeters, then folding it in half, cutting it out and making sure all the measurements worked. Now, if you don't have enough material, or if you want to cut the front and the back separately, you will need two rectangles that are 2 times the length of your dress by 1 time. So for example, for me, 200 centimeters by 100 centimeters twice. Take your material and fold it along the longest length twice so that you create a square. My square was 100 by 100 centimeters. Take your time so that everything lines up. Let's cut out the circle. You want to start at the corner where it's only made up of folds. Take the measurement of your dress, mine was 100 centimeters, hold it at that corner and then move it around to create the circle. Mark it at different points and that will let you know how to cut it out. I actually didn't use a chalk here, I used a pin to mark it. So yeah, whatever works. Take your front block and line it up to the top corner you just used. You want the fold to be on the fold of your material. Because I'm cutting the front and the back together, I'm not going to follow this exactly, but you do want to cut around the neck, then the shoulder, then down the arm, and then go straight down to create that circular part. As usual, I didn't know what to do with the neck. I was actually going to do a neck that's a bit unique and different, but I ended up not doing that and I'll explain why later. Because this is going to be for the front and the back, you can see that I'm not actually curving in the front arm as much as usual. I've left about 1 centimeter here in that dip, just to accommodate for the fact that it's for the front and the back. When you hit the end of the armhole, just cut straight down horizontally. Now you can keep it like this if you want to, but I think it's probably easier to sew if you dip in a bit at the upper bust line and create that part, because then when you join the arm, it should be easier to connect it. So I took my scissors and followed it down just a bit using the upper bust part of my bodice. Then I took it back out to match up the other part I cut. Once I did that, I then cut the neck. Now, if the front and the back of your neck are going to be the same, you could have just cut it at that point. But I separated mine. I marked how wide I wanted my shoulder. You don't have to do that. Just use your bodice block if it's the same thing. Now, I'm actually cutting this so that my front and the back are interchangeable and I can wear the front as the back and the back as the front. So I made a high neck for one and then a low neck for the other. Grab your other piece and measure the shoulder so it's the same length, hence you know your starting point, and then you can just choose where to end. Use your bodice block as a guidance so that if you know you don't want to show too much, cleavage, you can use the upper bust line to know where to stop. At first I thought a cornered edge might look good, but I thought this is such a soft piece, let me curve it out a bit. Now, I originally did want to do a more intricate design, but the reason I didn't do that is because I realized the lining will show too much because this material is quite light. So hopefully I can show a more intricate neck piece another day. Grab some material that is wide enough to fit your arm, fold in half so you can cut the left and the right arm together. Mine only went about an inch down, as you can see, because I only wanted a short sleeve. Even though I curved out the front of the block to match front and back, you can actually cut the arm piece using the front and the back dips because hopefully it should all work out. But of course, we're going to make sure before we actually sew it on. If you don't want to use chalk, another way to mark which part of the front is by doing a very small nip on either the front or the back, and that helps you know which one is the front or the back. Now we've cut out all our pieces, it's time to assemble. I'm going to finish the neck first using bias tape. Now the way I'm going to use the bias tape is so that it's actually visible. But first, of course, I'm going to cut it to side, giving myself about 2 centimeters either side for allowance. So take the right side of your bias tape and match it to the wrong side of your material. You want to attach it by opening it up and using the fold to sew it down. Now push it up a bit so you have some allowance. Give yourself about half a centimeter allowance on the actual bodice, so when you open up the tape it actually matches up to the edge of your neck, and then pin it down across the fold. You do not want to actually sew on the fold of the bias tape. You want to sew just to the right of it. Just to the right of it. That's so when we fold it, it actually lays better. Because we're working with a curve and we want to reduce creasing, my advice is to actually pin it all the way through. Now you can see I'm pinning it on the excess part, the fold I just unfolded, and I'm going to try and sew just to the right of that fold. Take it to your sewing machine and backstitch at the start, then take your time with a straight stitch, sewing just to the right of that crease line, maintaining it all the way around. You can see that with my left hand, I'm straightening out just a bit the material to the left to reduce creasing. Do that all the way around, and of course backstitch when you get to the end of the material meeting the bias tape. And look at this, guys, another angle shot. I hope you find it useful. This is what you should have so far. What you're then going to do is actually face the material up so you can see the right side. And you're going to curve all that over to the right side so you can see that clean finish. I advise you to iron this down to reduce creasing again. Then what we're going to do is sew that in place right along that crease edge. I've not opened up the bias tape, it's closed now, so all the wrong sides of the bias tape are hidden, and the wrong side of the material that we sewed down to the bias tape originally is also hidden. Again, whilst you're sewing, you want the material to be smooth so that you're not sewing in place any creases. Take your time so that your straight stitch is as neat as possible, then backstitch once you get to the end. Hopefully yours looks a bit like this, and of course those little things like getting matching material, all that is going to help. If you're noticing a bit more creasing but it removes when you just kind of straighten it out with your finger, it probably means you just want to go to the ironing board and sew it down once more. If I show you the wrong side of the material, you're going to see the benefit of sewing just to the right of the crease of the bias tape. If you show just to the right, the bias tape is going to lift up a bit more. As you can see here, I can see the white of the bias tape on the wrong side. That means I don't see the material at all at the neck on the right side. But if I sew on the crease of my bias tape, I'm more likely to see my material peeking up at my bias tape top at the neck when I'm facing the right side. It just means I have to do a bit more work when I'm ironing to hide it. But there you go. Let's move on to the next stage. Now, the reason why it's easier to do the bias tape first is because there's less curves to work with. So then you can just attach it at the shoulder. Match up your shoulder pieces, making sure the emphasis is on getting the neck aligned. Pin it in place and then sew it down, giving yourself a 1 centimeter seam allowance because that's what your bodice block had. Once you've done that, backstitch, sewed it, backstitch, trim off the excess at the shoulder and at the armhole. What you want to then do is measure your armhole and make sure it matches with the armhole on your sleeve piece. Now your sleeve piece is going to be accurate because I actually cut it to the front and the back. So mainly it's making sure it matches with the front. Now given the centimeter I added to the front when I was cutting out the armhole, it should actually match up. When I checked it, mine did match up, so that was great. Now if yours doesn't match up and if it's just a bit big, that's okay. You could just sew and trim it down later. If it's a bit small, just go in very carefully, increase the curve of your block just a bit. Your arm sleeve should be fine. It's your block you want to match to your arm sleeve. Now again, because mine match, I don't have to start at the center. I start at the corner and pin it all the way around, ready to sew on using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Take it to your sewing machine, making sure you put your arm sleeve right sides together with the front and the back piece that you've sewed. Backstitch, do a straight stitch, making sure you're not sewing in any creases. Backstitch at the end, and voila, you've attached your sleeve. So what you want to do is you want to do that for the left and the right sleeve. Now that's done, take your dress that's coming together and put it right sides together. Start with a back stitch at the top of your arm, then sew all the way down to the end. Give yourself a back stitch again. Careful at the arm, take your time to follow around the curve. Then continue with your 1 centimeter allowance all the way down. I then stayed at the sewing machine and actually hemmed the bottom, giving myself 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now if you want to, you can actually go and iron this down first, but I don't tend to do that with my seams if it's like just a project for me and I can just get it done quickly. So you want to be facing the wrong side of the material and you want to fold into the wrong side. I fold 1 centimeter, then I fold it again to create my finish. You want to do this a bit at a time. As you can see, I'm only about 5 to 10 centimeters away from the foot of my sewing machine, and then a bit at a time going all the way down. You can do this for your sleeve as well. The longer your sleeve, the easier you can hem it, giving yourself 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter fold again and finishing it off. I actually didn't finish mine off yet because it has a clean finish anyway, and I might do something a bit different with it later on. But yeah, that's it guys. You've sewn your beautiful summer dress. It's very light, very pretty, very airy to, let the air in because it's hot. Okay, it is hot. Now what I did is I just took some of my bias tape and put some crisscrosses into the wrong side of my material, then sewed it down at the neck just to give it a little, a little spice. So that's some of the things you can do to a basic neck to make it look a bit nicer. I hope you like that guys. Check us out at www.creatediamm.com and on Instagram at creatediamm, tagging me or using hashtag creatediammprojects if you try any of these. And on that note, have a great day and remember that you are wonderfully created.